The sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. For most people, it was a moment to appreciate nature's artistry. But Officer Scott Hayes wasn't in the mood for sunsets. Cruising down Route 22 in his patrol car, his eyes scanned the road like a hawk searching for prey. Hayes wasn't known for his warm demeanor or his measured approach to law enforcement. In his mind, every car was a potential crime waiting to be uncovered. It wasn't about upholding justice for him. The law was a game, and he made the rules. That's when he saw it. A sleek black sedan moving at a steady, lawful speed. There were no traffic violations, no signs of reckless driving, nothing suspicious. But for Hayes, the car's unassuming nature was enough to pique his interest. "Let's see what this one's hiding," he muttered to himself, flipping on his sirens. The piercing wail of the siren shattered the calm evening. The black sedan obediently signaled and pulled over to the shoulder, its tires crunching against the gravel. Hayes parked a few feet behind, his adrenaline already pumping as he stepped out of his cruiser, boots crunching purposefully with every step. The driver's window rolled down smoothly, revealing a composed and sharply dressed black man in his early 50s. His tailored jacket, immaculate shirt, and polished demeanor gave him an air of authority. There was something about the man, his posture, the way he exuded calm, that unsettled Hayes. "License and registration," Hayes barked, leaning slightly into the car. His hand rested on his holstered firearm, a move designed more to intimidate than protect. The man handed over the requested documents without hesitation. "Is there a problem, officer?" he asked, his voice steady, with just a hint of curiosity. Hayes didn't like the tone. It wasn't deferential enough. "Problem?" Hayes echoed mockingly. "Yeah, I'll tell you what the problem is. You look like someone with something to hide, driving around in a fancy car like this, thinking you're above the law." The man raised an eyebrow but remained silent, his face a mask of calm. His refusal to react only fueled Hayes's irritation. "Step out of the vehicle," Hayes ordered, motioning sharply. "On what grounds?" the man asked, his voice still level but now tinged with incredulity. "Let's just call it probable cause." Hayes shot back, his smirk widening. Before the driver could respond, Hayes reached for the door handle and pulled it open, gesturing impatiently for him to get out. The man complied, stepping out with deliberate, unhurried movements. His every action seemed calculated to make one thing clear: he had nothing to hide. Hayes, however, saw the man's composure as defiance. His jaw tightened as he moved to inspect the car. Hayes rummaged through the vehicle with all the finesse of a storm. The glove compartment was empty. The center console was impeccably organized. Then, his eyes landed on the back seat. A nondescript black briefcase sat neatly against the leather upholstery. "What's this?" Hayes demanded, yanking the briefcase from the seat as if he'd just unearthed contraband. The driver's calm demeanor finally showed a crack, his expression darkening. "That's personal property," he said, his tone firm. "I strongly suggest you put it back." "Suggest?" Hayes scoffed, clutching the case like a trophy. "You don't get to suggest anything. I think I'll have a look." The man took a step forward, his voice carrying a quiet authority. "Officer, that case contains sensitive materials. You really don't want to do this." Hayes chuckled, shaking his head. "Oh, I do. Trust me." Ignoring the man's warning, Hayes set the case on the hood of the car. With a few forceful twists, he managed to pop the latch open. What happened next was both immediate and unforgettable. A loud hiss erupted from the briefcase, followed by a pressurized burst of bright red paint. The spray hit Hayes square in the face, drenching him in seconds. The paint clung to his skin, his uniform, and even his boots, its sticky texture making it impossible to wipe off. "What the?" Hayes roared, stumbling back as the paint clouded his vision. He clawed at his face, but every attempt to clean himself only made it worse. His uniform, once crisp and authoritative, now looked like the aftermath of a child's finger painting project. The driver remained rooted to the spot, his arms crossed and his expression unreadable save for the faintest hint of amusement. "I warned you," he said simply. his tone carrying the weight of someone who had just won a battle without lifting a finger. Hayes flailed, his frustration boiling over. "What is this? Are you kidding me right now?" he bellowed, his voice cracking as the paint dripped onto his boots. "That's a security measure," the driver replied, his tone maddeningly calm. "It's designed to protect classified documents." "Classified," Hayes sputtered, his words choking on a mix of anger and humiliation. He pointed a trembling, paint-covered finger at the man. "You're under arrest." "For what? Exactly?" the driver asked, his voice steady. "For following your illegal commands? For tampering with my personal property?" For a moment, Hayes froze. The man's words struck like a sledgehammer, and the growing crowd of onlookers didn't help. Passing cars slowed, their drivers rolling down windows to capture the scene on their phones. "Yo, that cop just got wrecked," someone shouted from a passing car. Another honked in mock applause, and the sound of laughter filled the air. The driver gave a polite nod to the onlookers before turning back to Hayes. "You might want to wrap this up. Officer, you're drawing quite a crowd." Desperate to salvage some authority, Hayes grabbed his radio. "Backup needed. Officer assaulted. Repeat. Suspect armed with," he glanced at the dripping paint, "with some kind of hazardous device." The driver let out a short, dry laugh. "Hazardous? That's one way to describe a paint canister." "Shut up," Hayes shouted, his voice shaking with rage. "You don't get to talk to me like that." "And yet, here I am," the man replied smoothly, taking a measured step forward. "By the way, you might want to know who you're dealing with before you make things worse." "Who the hell do you think you are?" Hayes spat, though his voice wavered. The man adjusted his jacket, revealing the insignia embroidered on his sleeve. "Jonathan Reed, Rear Admiral, United States Navy, retired." The words landed like a thunderclap. Hayes's red-streaked face twisted in shock. Before he could recover, the sound of approaching sirens cut through the tension. Two patrol cars screeched to a halt, their flashing lights casting an eerie glow over the scene. Sergeant Emily Grant stepped out, her sharp eyes immediately taking in the absurd sight of Hayes drenched in red paint. "What's going on here?" she demanded, her tone sharp. "This man assaulted me," Hayes yelled, pointing at Reed. "He used some kind of chemical weapon." Reed raised an eyebrow. "Sergeant, I'm Rear Admiral Jonathan Reed, retired. What your officer is calling a chemical weapon is a security device, harmless, but effective." He ignored multiple warnings and tampered with classified materials. Grant's jaw tightened as she turned to Hayes. "Tell me this isn't what it looks like." Hayes stammered, but Reed cut him off. "He conducted an unauthorized search, ignored my protests, and triggered the device." The crowd's murmurs grew louder, phones capturing every second. Grant turned back to Hayes, her voice low and furious. "You're done. Hand over your badge and weapon." By the end of the week, Hayes's career was effectively over. He was suspended without pay, pending an investigation that everyone knew would end in his dismissal. Meanwhile, Reed received a formal apology from the department, along with assurances that steps would be taken to prevent similar incidents. As for Hayes, the paint eventually washed off, but the stain on his reputation was permanent. Reed, on the other hand, drove away that evening with quiet satisfaction. Justice had been served, not with a gavel, but with a vivid splash of red. A lesson Hayes wouldn't soon forget.